Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's lovely to have you here, and I've got a special guest today. It is Maureen O'Callaghan. Maureen, introduce yourself, share who you are, what you do, and why over 50 matters so much in your work.
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm an educator, I'm an author, and I'm a researcher, and I'm also a social entrepreneur. So I set up a social enterprise with the aim of helping businesses to combine making a profit with helping other people, society as a whole, um, and the planet. And I just recently, subject to some minor revisions, completed a PhD based on that subject of pro-social entrepreneurship. Women over 50, why do they matter? I think I think that I would sum it up and say, I just thought it was a heck of a waste. You've got some highly capable
Mm,
women who were emotionally intelligent, they got lots and lots of experience, they were resilient, got practical wisdom, but they're not necessarily being, I don't know, being asked to contribute. In many cases, a lot of them felt they were being ignored or
mm.
dismissed. And I just thought, what a waste. That phenomenal resource there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have discussed this in the past, haven't we? And I shared the story of how I'd been overlooked in the workplace once I got to over 50 and how I really struggled with that. And but me being me, I say what I think, so I managed to get hold of a senior civil servant and tell him how I was being sidelined and how it was so wrong. And it all coincided after I'd had my heart attack.
Oh,
So it's a really interesting one. I think if you start any ill health, it adds to the situation even more, and you really have to be clear in what you still want, and we have to be able to voice it. And I think sometimes we struggle with that.
I think we struggle because sometimes we can feel alone,
Yeah,
and it's only happening to us.
yeah,
And I think it's only by actually the brave people who talk about it, then you start to realize, no, it's not just me. So as you said, you shared your story, um, but there are lots and lots of similar stories, Nicola. It's
it's heartbreaking.
yeah, 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 it is.
Yeah, it is. Um, when did you start to become aware that women over 50 start to feel invisible in the corporate or business spaces? When did you come across this?
Okay, so I explained to you that I did a PhD and involved interviewing people, and that included interviewing some very, very capable women, um, and hearing their stories about being overlooked. And you're
Hmm.
talking maybe for decades. Uh, they were women that had got leadership skills, lots of commercial experience, good track records, and yet they weren't being listened to, they weren't being considered. And it was that invisibility. And I think what struck me and what I found quite difficult was it doesn't happen dramatically. It
Mm,
it's a kind of subtlety where you're not invited to meetings, you're not involved in conversations, you don't have access to that resource or something. It's quite subtle in many ways. So I think we need to start thinking hard about this.
and you just reminded me of a story. One of my clients just had that position and was not being included in certain meetings, wasn't being given all the um, information they needed. And in fact, thinking about it, I've had several like that. And I think that goes back to why I started really concentrating on difficult conversations because to change this, we need to have the conversations. We need to make people aware and we need to stand our ground. And that is very difficult unless you have the tools inbuilt into you in the first place. And when I say that, I mean about how to feed back that you are being left out, how to start that conversation, because it feels really hard to go and confront issues like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't think I'd fully realised. I mean, I have similar tales of things that have happened to me. And whilst I was probably quite good, I'm quite I suppose a pragmatic person, and I kind of got my evidence together and went and presented my case and saw myself as being fully armed with the facts. What I hadn't thought about was, where's my shield? Where's my protection? Where's my support network? And I think it's little things like that. You know, you can be brave and you can be willing to sort of stand up and disrupt
Mm.
things. But I think you need to think carefully about how you go about it. Hence, you know, the work you do on difficult
Ab-
conversations.
Yeah, and there's absolutely getting the evidence is really key, and picking your battles. I think sometimes we get hooked that we've got to do everything. If you're gonna, the model I teach is that you go in with no more than two or three things, because you start to dilute your message and you start to come across as moany and whiny. And this is about actually changing things and about actually having the impact it's having as well.
Yeah,
Um, so the evidence is really important and keeping it factual. And
yeah,
it sounds exactly like the sort of thing that you do now and
yeah,
you did in the past. So that's really good.
yeah, yeah. But I think you know, one of the areas that I focus on now is women who've left work, and they leave employment for all sorts of reasons, um, thinking that they're going to have a better time setting up and running their own business. But in actual fact, a lot of the women I spoke struggled to access networks that are quite male dominated, not just in the number of men, but actually the positions that men hold within those networks and the little cliques. Um, and I think that really impacts on visibility. And I think I said to you before, you know, I'm somebody reasonably confident. I've got to the door of networking meetings, turned around and gone home because I've been too scared
Absolutely.
to go in through the door because I knew I would be sidelined. I knew that people would be, or I'd had experience of people being quite patronizing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as I said, I had had the experience of this too. I really struggled with some of the men who were the big I am, who liked to correct me when I did my 60-second pitch when I was sharing stories, because I'm very much about storytelling, because I think that's really key when you're leading. And yeah, I found for a while I was still working corporately, and I was also going to networking in my days off and promoting my business. And I found my confidence really dropping in that period.
Mm.
And it's only because I spent time with a coach and did emotional intelligence work that I realized how it was affecting me. And can I honestly say straight away it changed? I changed at work. It actually helped me in the workplace by
Mm.
doing this work. Did it help me with my business? Probably not so much to start with. It's taken years of work to believe in myself and believe in what I'm doing and seeing the results my clients get, to know that what I'm talking about is right and not to let anybody dismiss me.
Good for you.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So, what do you think it is that means experienced women are still so often overlooked despite everything they bring? This is the bit I really struggle with.
I think this is my take on it. I think it's a societal problem. I think we value novelty and newness and less so experience.
Mm,
and we're looking for the next new thing, the next innovation. And I think there's a cultural narrative that innovation is somehow linked to young people, to youth, not
mm,
necessarily to older women. And I think the skills that you have to sustain a business are not necessarily the ones that are valued by society. Um,
mm. Yeah,
it's
I
quite deep. Yeah,
yeah, it is deep, and yeah, that's a really one to reflect on, isn't it? But yeah, I think for me, it is about finding that confidence as well. And as you said, I do think there's a cultural thing around age, ageism. It's unconscious. People don't realize they've got it, and that really sits there. I mean, the other one I've seen from personal experience is people and weight. That's another one. And it really drives me
yeah,
nuts because just because you're overweight doesn't mean you haven't got a good, intelligent brain that can contribute in the workplace. But I still see that coming into play as well. And I just think, yeah, that we do tend to think that, all of us, that people are more innovative when they're younger, but that's not the case. And
no,
I am staggered because um, I have had people sort of interns with me in the past, and actually they haven't got more that strategic view to see that there's an opportunity here and there's an opportunity there. Whereas when you've got the experience, you can tap into that
yep,
and bring that out to the fore. And I find it really fascinating. And I find it fascinating that, let's be honest, I'm 66. I could be retired, but I don't want to be. I want to keep working because I know that what I've got to give is very important to this world and to the workplace. And I find it fascinating that I have got on board with AI. I wouldn't say I agree with everything about AI, far from it, but I've learned how to use it for the best of my business. And yet, actually, there's so many more younger people who haven't yet mastered this.
mm,
So it's about don't write the older person off
oh yeah, yeah.
because they are still open to learning.
I think this is absolutely true. I think we're seen as less ambitious, less adaptable, that we're not so capable when it comes to technology, that somehow or other we should be winding down rather than evolving, moving on.
Mm,
And I don't think people necessarily know what to do with somebody who doesn't fit the mold.
that's right.
It's sad, and it's the thing is you shouldn't equate relevance with age.
No,
You need
not
to
at all.
start, yeah. It's people, like you and I. We make contributions. We have insights. We have perceptions based on a lifetime of experience, and
Absolutely.
that's huge capability that's been overlooked.
Yeah, it is. And surely this is one of the things that gets missed as well is that because of that experience and that capability, if you still have us in the workplace, you're stopping the wheel being reinvented because we've been through it. I can remember going through things 3 times.
Yep.
And on the third time, it was like, well, why are we doing this? What is different from last time? If it's no different, then why are we trying it?
Yep.
And I think that gets lost in all of that.
Yep.
And I think it's the bigger picture as well, because when you have got that depth of experience, you can see where there are risks and issues. You can see where you're going for the future. Because one of the tools I love using is PESTLE, which is a really good tool. I will put about it in the YouTube description. And it's about making sure that your business is foolproof for the future and looking ahead So it looks at political, economical, sociological, and
Technological.
legislative and
Yeah,
environment.
yeah.
What was T? Can you?
Technological.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all really important. And I love doing that with businesses, but very few businesses actually do that. So it's all those sort of skills that people, I think, belong to the younger ones as well and aren't tapping into actually, we've used it multiple times and probably know how to do it properly.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the other thing I'd add to this as well is that when I led operationally, we would have apprentices in and we had quite a lot of older people. And what actually was enlightening was seeing how the two gelled together and actually how the strengths supported each other and
Yeah.
how they learnt off each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think that's the combination you want.
I think you have those perspectives that are slightly different that encourages you to, certainly me, because I work with people who are younger than me, it stimulates a curiosity that I want to know more and why and how and all the rest of it. But it opens up that dialogue.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. And I've got an intern at the moment, and that's fascinating. And he's looking at things from a different angle from me.
Mm.
And that's just building a more diverse, rounder picture now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's brilliant. Okay, what are the common assumptions made about women over 50 that need challenging?
That they're no longer relevant. That's the biggest one. That what they have to offer is outdated, or that they have certain personality traits which are not um, as relevant in the workplace. And a
Yeah,
lot of that is biases, is discrimination.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And it needs to be knocked on the head from my experience.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think age discrimination against women is still almost too accepted or too quietly tolerated?
Yep. I think it is. It often operates quite quietly, rather than openly. It's very subtle the way in which it's done.
Hmm.
How can I think of an example where, you know, I had a colleague, I'm thinking back, as I'm doing the PhD, and was interested in my well-being after I'd had a period of not being well, but actually had no interest in my research or what I was achieving and what opportunities were arising. The focus was on how I might be limited because I'd had a period of illness.
Mm.
And it's quite subtle.
Yeah.
And, and,
Yeah.
and I don't think it was intentional either.
No, and again, I think that goes back to unconscious biases and the culture that we have in this country
Yeah.
and probably in other countries too. It would be interesting to hear, other people in other countries to share their thoughts in the comments after this video because, yeah, I think it's really prevalent.
But
But I,
I, I always go back to Shipman. How did this doctor manage to kill so many older women? Because the perception was that these were old women and they would die anyway. Nobody looked to see that
no.
they were actually vibrant, active women in many cases. The assumption was age equals feeble.
Which it doesn't.
No, not at all.
It doesn't. I mean, I look at my husband and I don't think it's just women that suffer with age discrimination. I think it's men
No.
too. I want to be clear on that. And I mean, he's 73 and he's still does his exercises every day, and he's absolutely active, and he's just phenomenal, and does his strength training as well. So it doesn't have to be the way we get
No,
written off.
no, not at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm going to move on to around grants and funding and business support, and
Mhm.
how do they play in helping women over 50 move
Oh,
forward?
I think there's two ways of looking at it. I think certainly grants and funding and business support help you move forward in a very practical way. No
Yeah.
question of it. But it's also the psychological validation
Yes.
that when you get that funding, when you get that support, it validates you in that particular role.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It does. And I had example of this at the university where I managed to secure a grant to set up my online learning platform, but it was so much more than a grant to set up the learning platform. It told me that what I was doing was worthwhile and
Yes.
people were recognizing it and people thought I was capable of delivering it. So
Yeah.
it's that psychological. And then
Yeah.
you look at it the other side, and that women are actually have access to far fewer grants than men, particularly older women. So what does that mean for their psychological validation? It is much harder to get a grant as a woman, and it's even harder to get it as an older woman.
Yeah. I
And
find the whole grant scenario, and I can be quite open about it, uh, quite frustrating at times because it's different for each county. It's not spread out fairly across the country. Um, and I find examples frequently where they've had the money in, they've spent it straight away within the first 2, 3 months, instead of thinking logically about spreading it across the year because it's for the year and
yep,
making sure that everybody who comes to them has a fair chance, because often they're not really well publicised either.
no, no,
So I think the whole grant thing really needs a major overhaul. And again, I would say it's who you know as well,
yep,
which makes me really sad because yes, it should be open to everyone that it has a business that's going in and wants to make changes. And I just feel it's very unfair at times.
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I don't know. And I don't think it's the people who are running its fault. I think it's the way it's set up. And I think that just needs looking at.
Yeah, I think there are some times where you almost feel they're looking for a reason not to give you the money rather than to give you money. That's the feeling I was left with. Um,
Hmm.
but other times I've had a very positive experience. The one I described to you, um, very positive,
Yeah.
very supportive. Yeah,
Yeah. And we can't obviously tar everybody with the same
no,
thing because it's probably pockets of places. So, yeah, it's a really interesting one, but I just wish they'd get the spread more even and, as you say, really look at their biases about how they're giving out these these grants.
or yeah. And I think the other problem is that they have a fixed view of what a business might look like, what a business delivers. So if you deliver something a little differently, um, then it's quite difficult to overcome that quite narrow thinking. And my my experience has been more recently that a lot of the people who are looking after grants, in charge of grants, are probably very good administrators. That doesn't mean to say they really understand. In my case, about business, they understand.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the vast amount of the vast majority of funding is aligned with government priorities. It's a
Yes.
government agenda. That, from
Yeah.
what my PhD research showed, is that's quite out of date.
Yeah.
Certainly, the education and support that businesses are getting is no longer fit for purpose, which means maybe the funding isn't either.
That's a whole nother ball game, isn't
Oh,
it, to
yeah,
open
talk
up?
for hours. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But I think you're
yeah.
probably right. So, from what you said, so what stops women over 50 from applying for opportunities they are more than qualified for?
I think two things. One is confidence, lack of confidence,
Yeah,
and the other one is accumulated experiences of being overlooked time and time again. So there's a degree of not cynicism, but think, why would I put myself through that again?
yeah,
Why bother? I know what's going to happen.
yeah,
And yeah, I think the other thing is, and it's very easy to do this, women don't necessarily recognize how good they are, older
mm,
women. And I think they underestimate. And so and this comes to funding bids as well, they don't necessarily put down everything that they're good at or that they've got experience of or that they've achieved because they almost take it for granted. Oh, well, that's what I do. And actually, not everybody does that, and not everybody does it well. But there are women that don't sell themselves.
I think there's a lot of women. I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of women, and I do think that there are a lot of strengths and skills they have
yeah,
that are overlooked because it's part of, say, running a household, etc. Bringing up children, you name it, and they often think, well, as you said, well, that's just what I do.
mm.
Yeah, so it's a really good point. So it's about how do we bring that out so that they recognise their contributions.
And they recognize the transferability
Yeah,
of the skills that they have and the experience they have.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because those skills need to be passed on.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of skills that are slowly dying as well. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you think about things as a child and nursery rhymes and little stories your family told you, within those are little sites of things that actually you take with you and you use, but you don't realize the importance at the time.
No, no.
So yeah, so much contributes to get us to this age,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. And it's a good age. I'm
Yeah,
finding. I'm 74 now, and it's yeah. There are frustrations, absolutely, but there's also a freedom that comes with not necessarily um, towing the line, shall I
yeah,
say? Not necessarily. I'm not sure I'm employable now, but I'm not employed by another person now, and so I have tremendous freedom to do what I want, say what I want. But not every woman has that freedom.
no.
No.
And we need to remember that as well, don't
Yeah.
we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What would better support for women over 50 actually look like? Think, utopia. What would you want to see?
The biggest one is to see lived experience as an asset, not as a problem.
Yeah.
And I have been told, when I was at university, that my experience was problematic to the person who said it, not to me. But I think the recognition that life experience is an asset. It's not a threat to other people either. is something that can be harnessed and utilized for everybody's benefit. And it's some
Absolutely.
and you can't replace that life experience. You
No.
no. Uh,
How? What a strange thing to say because
hmm,
that lived experience contributes and enhances. Of course, there has to be a time and a place of when it
yeah,
comes out, and it's about utilizing it for the best. And if you've been through something, you can give insights that other people probably haven't had because they've not been through it.
absolutely. But I think if you can recognize life experience, then that can inform things like mentoring, clearer funding pathways, more inclusive networking, digital upskilling, spaces where women feel generally respected. But I think the most important thing is that services are developed around potential, not stereotypes. You know, that
Absolutely.
it has to,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. And I think I can bring into this as well is that from all my studies around neurodivergent, thank you to my eldest for all of this, um, is that we have less than 1 in 5 of autistic people working, and we have a talent field there, a talent group that are being ignored, but who have a diverse view of the world and how things can be better, and have so much insight, and we're just not tapping into it.
No,
And so that's another area. So when we're not incorporating all these diverse views, we're actually holding ourselves back.
yeah, yeah,
And I think people forget that one sometimes.
mm, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what would you say needs to change in workplaces, funding bodies, and business networks?
I think we need to think more broadly about when we talk about innovation, um, leadership, entrepreneurship, potential, that we have to look at it in all of its forms, including older women. And I think women should be included in leadership pipelines. Key,
Yeah, with that.
absolutely key. Yeah. Um, but there needs, you mentioned it earlier, far more intergenerational collaboration moving forward. It's
Yeah,
it's untapped potential. Both can learn so much from each other.
totally agree.
They bring different strengths,
Yeah,
and as a result, businesses become stronger when you value all of those strengths.
no, I totally agree. And I think
Yeah,
that's the way to go. I do know that there are firms where they only have teams of young people. And, I don't know if you're watching this and you are in one of those teams, tell me. Or if I'm completely wrong, tell me. I'd be really interested to hear your stories because I just think that you gain so much from having those generate intergenerational teams. I've seen it work. I've got some fantastic stories from there, and they were such fun days as well because they would do little things. I can remember things like they'd have an Easter egg tasting competition, and it was because one of them would come up with it and the rest would join in. Now, until those apprentices went in, nothing like that happened. Um, then another time it was hot cross buns, and it was just that community building. And then they'd tap into each other's strengths. We found out somebody was really good at art, so we were doing some posters for an event, and he did them for us. So everybody has strengths and skills. And I just think this is the thing that we are missing out on when we don't connect people together.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. What would you say to a woman over 50 who feels she has still more to give but does not know where to start for our
Okay.
finishing slot?
Okay. I would encourage her to think of her experience not as a limitation, but as a strength. Um, I would say you don't have to reinvent yourself completely. You've got to this stage in your life by being you, and the next chapter begins by recognizing that it's a progression. I would I would say I would probably encourage somebody to start small if necessary. Small steps, reconnect with your interests, your concerns, what you value, what you want your life to be about, and then seek supportive people in environments where that's valued. But the most important thing is to remember that your contribution doesn't have an expiry date, that you can continue contributing throughout your life. And I mean, we had the most wonderful example with Attenborough. He was 100 and still contributes. And I think
Mm.
we have some wonderful examples of older people who are still making it happen, still have a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about it, this is one of the things that sounds very woo-woo, but I went through doing my human design. I don't know if anybody's heard it, but it's basically looking at your chart of when you were born and everything. Um, that was one of the things that actually added to my confidence because it actually picked out that I had leadership in my chart and that I was a person who listened to people and picked up their needs and reflected that back to them and developed what they needed. And it was so spot on. I was just like, oh, it was just like the opening my eyes to this is what I am. So we all have these hidden bits. We talk about the Johari window and the hidden bits to other people and the hidden bits that we don't even see. And actually, I think that was really helpful for me in uncovering some of that. So,
Yeah.
Maureen, if you've never done your human design, I would really recommend it, and I'll send you a link.
Okay, thank you. I just share I learned something. I had done a lot of kind of psychology. My master's is in psychology. But I was introduced to character strengths, and you can find your character strengths. There's a thing on the website, and you can do it for nothing. And I found I had three character strengths: love of learning, absolutely spot on, absolutely true. Justice, I cannot I cannot deal with unfairness. I have to do something, and that's what my whole career has been about. And the other one is courage, bravery, the thing. But what I also learned, although those character strengths of how my life is aligned, I also learned you can overuse them.
Absolutely.
So when I kind of look at courage, I can you know overdo it and be a bit foolhardy if I don't monitor. But I think what you hit on there, Nicola, is the importance of knowing yourself.
Yes.
And that is one of the huge gaps in business education and
Mm.
support. It focuses on the business, developing the business. It doesn't really pay enough attention, I believe, and so did the people I interview, um, this whole business of knowing yourself. That is
It's
so important.
so it's so key. And what I find is a lot of entrepreneurs, small businesses, micro businesses, don't actually look at themselves as leaders. The amount I interviewed when I first started off who just didn't think they were a leader. And
Mm,
my view is that every one of us who is running a business is a leader.
mm.
And for leading, you do need to know yourself
Yeah,
and your
absolutely.
impact as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that as the years have gone, the more I've got to understand myself better and understand my impact. And I can now recognize when as you say, when I've gone over the overdrive, um, And it's quite funny because strengths can go into overdrive as well.
Yeah,
And you know, I recognize when you said that, it's probably why we get on so well. Very much about learning and very much about fairness, about there being
yeah,
fairness in the world and looking after each other. And this is why I think there does need to be kindness and compassion in the workplace.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that was a very interesting chat. I'm sure
Good.
we could have gone even deeper still, but for today, that's where
Yeah.
we're at.
Thank
So
you, Nicola.
thank you. And thank you for everybody
Enjoyed
for
it.
listening. All right. Take care. See you next
Bye.
time.